imagine just for a second that you are moving into a brand new house.
Oh, right. The dream.
Yeah, exactly. The dream. You get the keys, you walk through the front door, and you start unpacking your boxes.
Right?
And you think the place is entirely yours, but then, you start noticing things.
Like what?
Well, like a cold draft in a room with no windows, or, a shadow that seems to move just a little too deliberately out of the corner of your eye.
Ooh, okay. That's unsettling.
Right, and eventually you realize the truth. The previous tenants, they never actually moved out.
Wow.
They are still living there, right alongside you. You just can't see them.
I mean, that forces a complete reevaluation of your environment. Just the idea that we're sharing our most intimate spaces with something entirely outside our perception.
Yeah.
It's deeply unsettling.
It really is. But here's the thing. This isn't just a spooky campfire metaphor.
No.
According to a massive body of ancient Arabic lore, this is the literal reality of our world. These unseen roommates are the Jinn.
And that's what we're getting into today.
Exactly. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at two really fascinating pieces of source material that break this all down.
Which are incredible to read, by the way.
Oh, totally. First, we have an incredibly intricate Arabic visual guide. It's essentially a bestiary that maps out this diverse array of Arabian mythological creatures.
Right. It reads like a naturalist's field guide to the invisible world.
Yeah, exactly like that. And we are pairing that guide with a comprehensive theological and folkloric breakdown. A text that explains Jinn society, their origins, and their capabilities within Arab and Islamic heritage.
Which is necessary context, honestly, because, for anyone listening, the concept of a Jinn or a genie has likely been heavily filtered.
Right, through modern pop culture.
Exactly. I mean, the blue cartoon character granting 3 wishes from a brass lamp. That is a drastic, almost comical reduction of a profoundly complex parallel society.
Yeah, so we are leaving the brass lamps behind today.
Yes.
Our mission for this deep dive is to decode how this hidden society actually operates. We want to look at their rules of engagement and ultimately what these ancient entities reveal about our own human psychology.
Because the deeper you look at the Jinn, the more they look like a distorted reflection of us.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how they operate today, we have to rewind the clock.
Right, back to the very beginning.
Yeah, to the timeline of Earth before humanity even arrived.
Because humans were not the first intelligent beings to establish societies here.
Right.
The Jinn were created thousands of years before us. They are the original inhabitants.
And the material they were created from, it establishes this really fascinating biological contrast.
It really does.
Because humans were formed from clay, right? Mud, earth, something very tangible, heavy, grounded.
Physical stuff.
But the Jinn were created from something called smokeless fire.
Yes.
The Arabic term in the text is nar al-samum, which translates roughly to a poisonous or scorching wind.
What's fascinating here is what that implies. It implies fire without the ash, heat without physical substance.
Just pure heat.
Right. If you think about it in almost physics-based terms, it's pure energy or radiation.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
And that creation material sets up the fundamental dynamic between our two species.
Yeah.
Humans are bound by gravity. We're slow to change. We're dense.
Or mud.
Exactly, we're mud. The Jinns are older, volatile, shifting, and they operate at a frequency we simply cannot perceive. It's a literal clash of density and elements.
And from there, the timeline gets incredibly chaotic. I mean, they lived on Earth first, they possessed free will.
Which is a big deal.
A huge deal. And they essentially ruined the neighborhood. The sources say they became corrupt, started shedding blood, and engaged in massive destructive wars.
Well, with free will comes the capacity for immense destruction.
Yeah.
Their society devolved into such chaos that it actually required an angelic divine intervention.
Just to rein them in.
Right, to organize their existence and essentially pave the way for humanity's arrival.
Which brings us back to that apartment analogy from the start. They didn't leave.
No, they're still here.
They still live here on Earth. They just exist in a parallel dimension, vibrating at that different frequency you mentioned.
Exactly.
So in their natural state, they are completely invisible to us. But, and this is the creepy part, they can see us perfectly.
It is the ultimate one-way mirror. But, we shouldn't make the mistake of thinking of them as ethereal spirits drifting aimlessly through walls either.
Right, they aren't ghosts.
No, they are a biological and sociological mirror to humanity. They have digestive systems. They eat, they drink, they reproduce.
They form families.
Yes, and they eventually die.
And they also have entirely complex societies with their own laws, tribes, and factions. which means they aren't universally evil.
Right.
That's a major departure from Western concepts of demons. Because they have free will, they span the entire moral spectrum.
Some are righteous, some are totally corrupt.
Yeah, there are even historical accounts in the lore of Jinn quietly listening to the Quran, and converting to Islam, believing in Prophet Muhammad's message.
It completely reframes the concept of a monster.
How so?
Well, you might have a Jinn entity occupying the same physical space as your living room,
Oh boy.
but they aren't lurking there to scare you. They might just be going about their mundane Tuesday, dealing with their own Jinn politics and Jinn family drama, completely indifferent to your existence.
That is somehow comforting and terrifying at the same time.
Right.
But if they're a complete parallel society with different factions and moral compasses, they have to have a structure. They aren't a monolith.
No, not at all.
And this is where that visual bestiary we mentioned becomes a crucial tool for categorizing the unknown.
Yeah, the visual variety in that guide speaks to an incredibly vast ecosystem. It classifies the Jinn into 4 primary distinct types.
Organized by what? A mixture of power, age, and malevolence? Because the illustrations are haunting. You have figures that look like hunched over shadows with elongated limbs.
Yeah.
Creatures with multiple animal heads, beings that look half human and half reptile. It's intense.
Right, very intense.
But at the base level of this hierarchy, the guide places Al-Jinn.
Right. Al-Jinn are the foundational type.
Mm-hmm.
They're the most common, and they're deeply tied to the earth.
So they're like the everyday folks.
Exactly. If there is an everyday working-class citizen of this parallel world, this is it. They possess the baseline abilities of their kind, but aren't necessarily looking to conquer or destroy.
Got it. But stepping up the ladder, we hit Al-Ifrit.
Yes, the Ifrits.
The lore describes Ifrits as highly intelligent, extremely powerful, and cunning. They are the tricksters and the scholars of the Jinn world.
Encountering an Ifrit in these historical accounts usually means you are dealing with a master of manipulation.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. They command immense magical power and have accumulated centuries of knowledge. Their danger lies in their intellect as much as their physical capability.
But they aren't even the apex predators of this hierarchy, right?
It is not.
That title belongs to the third category, Al-Marid.
Marid.
The Marid are the absolute strongest, the most ancient, and physically the largest. When old folktales describe massive, awe-inspiring entities rising from the ocean or towering over mountains,
They are almost always describing a Marid.
yeah.
Their strength is often tied to their age and their proximity to that original, unadulterated, smokeless fire.
Which brings us to the fourth category, and this one diverges from sheer physical power into pure morality.
Right.
These are al-Shayateen, the demons.
The Shaytan don't operate in that moral gray area we talked about earlier. They are fundamentally tied to temptation, corruption, and an active agenda to lead humans astray.
So they represent pure malevolence.
Exactly. Pure evil. But what makes all 4 of these categories so difficult for humans to comprehend, and what the bestiary really struggles to capture, is their primary physical trait.
Which is?
They're master shapeshifters.
Right.
They can take the form of humans, everyday animals like cats, dogs, or snakes in the desert, or even non-corporeal things like a wisp of smoke or an elongated shadow.
Okay, wait, let me push back on this.
Sure.
I'm looking at this bestiary, which goes into painstaking detail, drawing these distinct, horrifying shapes. The multiple heads, the reptilian scales.
Yeah.
If they can shapeshift into literally anything, from a stray cat in the alley to a shadow on the wall, how do the authors of this guide even know what their true form is?
That is the big question.
Right. I mean, why draw a half-reptile monster at all if it could just be a black dog?
The source text actually acknowledges that paradox. Their true form is genuinely unknown to humans.
Seriously.
Seriously, it is entirely formless energy. The shapes detailed in the bestiary are human attempts to give shape to the formless.
So the illustrations are essentially psychological projections.
In many ways, yes. Because their resting state is tied to heat, vibration, and unseen force, the shapes we see in the bestiary are either the specific forms the Jinn chose to take to intimidate a human observer,
Oh, wow.
or they are the flawed human mind trying to process an encounter with a localized field of smokeless fire. The human brain fills in the gaps with scales, claws, and animal heads to make sense of the terror.
Honestly, that is significantly more terrifying than a monster with sharp teeth.
I agree.
Just the idea that their true form is just a sudden distortion of the air, or a massive localized spike in temperature in an otherwise cold room.
Which brings up the mechanics of how these entities actually interact with our physical world.
Right.
If you have highly intelligent, invisible beings of ancient fire disguised as the stray cat sitting on your porch, what are the rules of engagement?
Well, here's where it gets really interesting, because their abilities are vastly superior to human biology.
Without a doubt.
We already mentioned shape-shifting and complete invisibility, but they also utilize lightning-fast teleportation, moving across vast distances in the blink of an eye.
And they possess the ability to manipulate dreams, weaving narratives into a sleeping human's mind.
That's so invasive.
It is. But the most insidious and the most heavily analyzed power in the theological texts is a concept called waswasa.
Waswasa, which translates to whispering, right?
Yes.
But the mechanics of it are entirely internal. It's not a voice in your ear.
No, not at all.
It is the insertion of an idea, a doubt, an urge, or a sudden spike of fear directly into the human consciousness.
It operates so seamlessly that the human target believes the thought is organically their own.
That is just wow.
It is an incredibly sophisticated theological explanation for human frailty. If a person suddenly experiences a violent urge or a spiral of despair out of nowhere...
This framework suggests it isn't a chemical imbalance.
Right, it's a foreign entity vibrating at your frequency, inserting a localized suggestion.
So if you're listening to this and thinking, this just sounds like an ancient pre-scientific way to describe schizophrenia, anxiety, or intrusive thoughts, you're absolutely on the same page as the sociologists who study this lore today. We will get into that psychological mirror shortly, but we have to look at where these interactions actually take place physically, because they don't usually establish their societies in the middle of a bustling human metropolis, right?
No, they prefer the margins of human dominion. The sources indicate they are drawn to places of transition, isolation, or decay.
Deep deserts, dark cave systems, abandoned ruins.
Yeah. They also favor places of impurity or neglect. Trash dumps, graveyards, abandoned buildings.
But the text adds a rather chilling caveat. While they prefer the margins, they can and do live unnoticed right among us.
Yep.
They aren't allergic to a modern basement or an empty guest room.
And when those habitats overlap, the relationship between humans and Jinn is far more complex than a simple predator-prey dynamic.
It's a broad spectrum. On the milder end, you have that waswasa, the subtle whispering.
Right.
Then you have the more extreme, highly documented folk belief of possession, where a Jinn entity actually bypasses a human's spiritual defenses, enters their body, and assumes control of their physical form.
But there is also cooperation.
Oh, right.
Humans and Jinn form rivalries, sure, but they also forge alliances. In occult traditions and ancient lore, humans who possess the right esoteric knowledge can bind Jinn to execute complex magical commands.
Guarding ancient treasures, building massive structures.
Yes. King Solomon is famously cited in the lore as having commanded vast legions of Jinn to build his temples.
Which is wild. But you know, when you list out all these powers, invisibility, teleportation, mind whispering, possession, it sounds like a completely rigged game.
It really does.
Humanity should have been wiped out centuries ago. But the lore outlines a very specific cosmic rule set. Their abilities are explicitly not absolute.
Right. It is a profound system of checks and balances. The Jinn might have speed, invisibility, and millennia of accumulated knowledge, but humans are granted immense spiritual authority.
The defensive tools humans use, specifically within Islamic culture, aren't about fighting fire with fire. You don't physically fight a creature of smokeless fire.
No, you'd lose.
Exactly. It's about spiritual boundary setting.
Humans use specific Quranic recitations, prayers of protection, and a practice called dhikr, which is the continuous rhythmic remembrance of the divine.
And the mechanics of how this works are fascinating. It's not just asking for help. It is actively altering the spiritual frequency of a space.
Yes.
By reciting specific verses, a human is asserting dominion over their physical and spiritual environment. They establish a localized domain of authority that the Jinn, despite all their raw elemental powers, simply cannot penetrate.
It anchors the space in reality. The Jinn operate on shifting, volatile energy. Human spiritual practice provides a grounding force.
An absolute boundary.
Exactly. An absolute boundary that nullifies their influence.
Yeah.
The limitations of the Jinn are crucial to this lore because they establish human agency.
Right.
We are not helpless victims wandering through an invisible minefield. We have the tools to secure our own domains.
So stepping back from the literal rules of magic, the amulets, the prayers, and the shape-shifting, we have to look at the longevity of this lore.
Why it's stuck around?
Yeah. Why have these specific stories survived for thousands of years? Why are we still analyzing beings of smokeless fire in the 21st century?
The cultural footprint is staggering. Jinn are the foundational narrative device in classic Arab literature. I mean, most visibly in the 1001 Nights.
Oh, absolutely.
They're woven into serious theological text, and they dominate centuries of folk tales across multiple continents.
And they haven't been relegated to ancient history either. Today, Jinn are the central antagonists in modern international horror films.
Streaming series, video games,
Yeah, contemporary fantasy novels, they continually adapt to the era.
and that adaptability is the key. The Jinn represent something far deeper than an archaic monster myth.
Okay.
Symbolically, they represent humanity's eternal struggle with the fear of the unknown. They are the ultimate embodiment of the hidden world.
Because as a species, we are fundamentally uncomfortable with the reality that we are not in total control of our environment. When a sudden, unexplained illness strikes a family, or when a string of bizarre bad luck ruins a harvest, or when someone's personality suddenly and violently shifts without a clear medical explanation, the Jinn provide a framework.
They give the terrifying, invisible forces of the world a face.
Even if that face is a shifting, formless shadow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, they externalize our internal darkness. Because the Jinn possess free will and span the entire moral spectrum, they serve as a perfect, distorted mirror of human nature itself. We project our own capacity for immense good and immense cruelty onto this invisible society.
Let's look back at waswasa, that concept of whispering.
Yeah.
Before modern psychology developed a clinical vocabulary for intrusive thoughts or cognitive dissonance or sudden impulses of rage, the concept of the Jinn provided a highly structured way to combat that darkness.
It really did.
It allowed a person to say, this destructive thought is not who I am, it is a foreign entity, and I can banish it.
It separates the sin from the self.
So what does this all mean?
Well, whether you view the Jinn as literal biological entities of invisible fire sharing our planet, or as rich, enduring psychological metaphors, the lore is ultimately humanity's brilliant mechanism for making sense of the invisible forces that shape our lives.
They are the ultimate expression of our relationship with the things we cannot physically see, but that we know instinctively have power over us.
Right.
From their origins as the volatile first inhabitants of Earth, through their complex hidden society of Jaan, Ifrits, and Merits, to their unsettling ability to walk among us completely undetected.
The lore demands that we acknowledge our vulnerabilities while simultaneously reminding us of our own inherent authority to establish boundaries against the unseen.
It's so powerful, and the source texts leave us with this profound idea that Jinn symbolize unseen forces, intrusive thoughts, and the subtle manipulation of the human mind.
Yes.
When I look at our modern, hyper-connected society, the parallels are impossible to ignore. We are constantly surrounded by invisible forces engineered to manipulate our behavior.
This raises an important question, because the mechanisms have just evolved. We are surrounded by algorithms continuously curating our perception of reality.
Yeah.
We have unseen data streams tracking our habits, optimizing ways to hold our attention.
We have digital whispers drop seamlessly into our news feeds, perfectly designed by unseen architects to plant a specific thought, trigger a spike of outrage, or subtly shift our worldview.
Without us ever realizing the thought wasn't originally ours.
Exactly. It is the industrialized digital application of waswasa.
It absolutely is.
So as you go about your day-to-day, as you pick up your phone, scroll through your feed, or open your laptop, I want you to ask yourself, in a world where the invisible forces have gone digital, what are the modern-day Jinn whispering into your mind right now?
That is a vital question for the unseen world we all navigate every day.
And more importantly, do you have boundaries in place to keep them out? Thanks for exploring the unseen with us. Until next time.